All right, let's dive into one of the most famous texts in the world, the Ten Commandments. But we're not going to treat this like some dusty old history lesson. Nope. We're going to look at the first 4 commands through a really interesting lens, as a blueprint for a relationship. And we're drawing from a sermon that really brings this ancient code to life.
So let me start with a question. Have you ever seen a sign like this? It's a simple question, right? But it gets to the heart of what we call integrity. What do you do when nobody's watching? The Ten Commandments actually offer an answer to this, and it all boils down to the idea that there's always an audience of one.
See, this idea of an audience of one is the key that unlocks the whole thing. These commandments aren't just a random list of do's and don'ts from some far-off cosmic dictator. No, they're presented as the framework for a real relationship, a covenant, between a people and the God who had just saved them. So let's see how that stage was set.
Before a single rule is laid down, God introduces himself. And what's fascinating is what he doesn't say. He doesn't start with, "Hey, I'm the guy who created the entire universe." Instead, he says, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery." He's establishing his authority based on rescue, on redemption, not just raw power. So the laws that come next, they're framed as a gift for people who are already free.
Okay, so with that foundation of "I'm the one who rescued you" firmly in place, the commandments start. And they're usually split into 2 sections. We're going to focus on the first 4, because they're all about that vertical relationship, the one between a person and God.
Now, just a quick side note, not everyone slices this cake the same way. In Jewish and Catholic traditions, for example, they usually group the first 3 commands together. But the sermon we're looking at follows the Reformed view, which sees a clean split. The first 4 are about our duty to God, and that's the 4-6 split we'll be using today.
And that brings us to number 1, the big one, the absolute bedrock of the entire system. You shall have no other gods before me. I mean, it sounds simple enough, but at the time, this was a revolutionary idea.
This wasn't just about putting God at the top of your personal pantheon. This was a radical declaration of what we now call exclusive monotheism. It was saying not only is this God the only one for you, Israel, but all those other gods worshipped by your neighbors, they're not real. They don't even exist. This demanded a kind of singular, all-in loyalty that completely set them apart from every other culture around them.
So if Commandment 1 is true, if there's only one single real God, then Commandment 2 flows right from it. It's the logical next step. You can't make a physical statue or image of him or anything else and then bow down to it.
But why such a strict ban on images? I mean, what's the big deal? Well, the sermon brings in the reformer John Calvin to explain the theology here. The idea is that God is an infinite, spiritual, and visible being. So, trying to capture him in a finite, physical thing that you made with your own hands, it's seen as fundamentally misrepresenting his very nature. It's like trying to bottle up the entire ocean in a teacup. It's just an insult to what he is.
Now, of course, most of us probably aren't carving little statues in our basements. But that begs a pretty important question, right? Has the principle just gone away, or have our idols just changed their shape? What are the things we tend to put on a pedestal?
You know, our modern idols tend to be a little more abstract. They're the things we pour our lives into. Things like money, career, possessions, or power. In this sense, an idol is basically anything we look to for our ultimate security, our meaning, and our identity. It's anything that we let take that number 1 spot, that the first commandment says belongs to God and God alone. Commandment number 3 takes us from how we picture God to how we talk about him. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. And let me tell you, this is about way more than just not swearing when you stub your toe.
The original Hebrew word here has this idea of emptiness or vanity. So to misuse God's name means to attach it to something that's empty or false or trivial. That could be anything from swearing a false oath in court, to using his name to manipulate somebody, or even just using it so casually and constantly that it loses all its weight. It's really about respecting the reality and character of God in the way we speak.
And that brings us to the 4th and final command in this group. Now, this one's different. You might have noticed the first 3 are all, don't do this, don't do that. This one is a positive command. It's you shall do something. And that something is, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy.
And the command itself has this really cool 3-part structure. First, you've got the command itself, remember. Second, you get the how-to, rest, stop working. And third, you get the why, because God himself rested after creating everything. So this isn't just a rule, it's an invitation to copy God's own rhythm of work and rest, to build it right into the fabric of our lives.
So, we've covered the what, right?
no other gods, no idols, respect the name, and take a day off. But what about the why? I mean, is this whole thing just a list of restrictive rules designed to make life less fun? Or is there something deeper going on?
Well, a really common way to look at this is that law equals bondage. More rules, less freedom. But the perspective we're exploring here turns that on its head. Remember, this law was given to people after they were freed from slavery. So it's not a roadmap back to bondage, it's a guide for how to live in real freedom. Think of it like this. The rules of the road don't enslave you, they free you from the chaos of a demolition derby, allowing you to actually get where you're going.
And this isn't just some Old Testament idea that gets tossed out later. When Jesus shows up, he actually doubles down on it. He says he didn't come to get rid of the law, but to fulfill it, to show its deepest, truest meaning. The law is like the foundation, and his teachings are like the beautiful house built on top of it, showing what it was all about from the very beginning.
Okay, so what does all this ancient history have to do with us today? How do we take these principles and actually live them out? Well, it boils down to living what could be called a set-apart life, a life that looks distinct because it's aimed at a higher purpose.
So here are the big takeaways. Applying these commands today means we have to consciously put God first, ahead of all those modern idols we talked about. It means our worship has to be authentic, not about external things, but about our internal posture. It means we should speak in a way that honors God's character. And, maybe the hardest one for us, it means we have to intentionally build a rhythm of rest and spiritual connection into our crazy, busy lives.
But here's the most important part. Following these commands is never presented as a way to earn God's favor. It's not a transaction. Instead, the whole thing is framed as a loving, grateful response to the one who, as the very first sentence says, already rescued you. The law isn't the rescue plan, it's the thank you note you write after you've been saved.
And that kind of leaves us with a bigger question to think about, doesn't it? Whether we're talking about the Ten Commandments, a country's constitution, or just our own personal code of ethics, how do these big foundational rules shape who we are? Do they limit our freedom, or do they actually create the conditions where we can be truly free? It's definitely something worth mulling over. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.